In Java, we are able to create graphical user interfaces. In creating these graphical user interfaces, we are going to rely heavily on some very common ones, common graphical user interface components, such as the labels, the text fields, together called the text box. And we could also use the combo box. We have checkboxes, radio buttons, that will allow us to pick only one option as against using checkbox where you can pick more than one option per time. And then we also have the slider and then the list box. Okay. A button is also an example of a component to be used on the graphical user interface. Please, few seconds. Right, so the very common library that is used, Java API that is used for building graphical user interface is called the Java Foundation Classes, JFC. The JFC is made up of two main classes. That is the AWT, or which is in for the abstract windowing toolkit, and then the string classes. These are the two main Java Foundation classes that are used in building graphical user interfaces. Okay. However, for this class, we'll put more emphasis on the string class instead of the abstract windowing toolkit. Okay. The AWT allows creation of applications and applets with graphical user interface. You know what applets are. Applet is that which gives Java an environment, making it capable of creating applications that reside on the network. Okay, so if you want to create web-based applications, then you focus on learning creation of focus on learning applets. Okay. So in the AWT does not actually draw the user interface component on the screen. It communicates through a layer of software called peer classes. And this tends to be the disadvantage in using the abstract windowing toolkit. And that will be the major reason why we'll be using the string classes. The string classes do not use third-party software layers to project the component that you want to create at the graphical user interface level. And because of that, the interface is built from the string classes as uniform, moving from one operating system to the other. If you are talking of the AWT, because the AWT relies on third-party software, these third-party software do not have the same representation in every operating system. So moving from one operating system to the other, there would be some components in the AWT that will work in Mac that will not work on Windows or Linux or some other variants of the operating system. Okay, so the reason why this limitation shows up is because of its reliance on what? On the peer classes. So like I mentioned, Java programs using the AWT, they look consistent with other applications on the same system, can offer only components that are common to all operating systems that support what? Java. The behavior component across operating system can differ. And this is the limitation I was mentioning earlier, right? Programmers cannot easily also extend the AWT component. And who want to do development where you cannot extend attributes. What extending attributes from other installed component is what makes development easy. So if there are instances where you cannot extend attributes, then you would want to do away with those kinds of levels of what development. The AWT components are commonly called heavy weight components. Heavyweight components still having a direct link with the reason why they could not be what extended. The string class on the other side was released with the Java 2. It provides an improved alternative in creating the graphical user interface, that is the applications, and then what? But the applets also. The string classes rely. Yes, sir.
Yes, sorry, I wanted to ask,
what does it mean to extend AWT components?
AWT components.
I think you are closer to a friend that has turned on a microphone, so your question did echo. I did not get to get the full impulse of it. If you are closer to a friend, can you kindly ask him to turn off his microphone whilst you ask your question?
Okay.
So please, all of you online, turn off your microphone, and then only the one asking the questions you have the microphone turned on.
All right. I was asking what it means to extend AWT components.
Okay. Every class has an attribute. Every component has an attribute. Extending an attribute would mean, for example, you want to borrow the behavior of one button in the AWT for another button, or you want to borrow the behavior of the underlying operating system for the components that you want to use in the graphical user interface. What we are talking about with the extending from the peer libraries is that the peer libraries are developed for specific operating systems. So then, if you move the application you have developed from, let's say, a Windows-based machine where primarily the full development took place to a Mac-based operating system, because the peer libraries are not the same for the Windows operating system and then the Mac-based operating system, the graphical user interface, as you did see earlier on, whilst you were developing on the Windows-based machine, will not be the same if you view them on the Mac OS machine. This is the reason why you would not want to use the AWT, but you want to use the string class, because in the string classes, you are able to extend the attributes. We're able to borrow attributes from another control, and you still be able to move them to a different machine or different operating system, and they would have the same attribute. So extending will mean that component A has some set of defined properties, and those properties could be inherited by another component. That is the extension. Do you understand?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So, like we're saying, the string class draws most of its components, most of its own components. It doesn't need the peer classes as it is in the AWT to draw the component. Okay, and that is where the advantage comes in. And this gives it also a consistent look and a predictable behavior on any operating system, any operating system. So it is more of an advantage doing development relying on components from the string than the AWT. And then also the very last thing, the swing component can be easily what? Extended. And that is a happy moment for every developer where you can extend attributes. It makes your development much easier. There's still some of your friends who want to join the class. Let me halt the presentation and I will allow them in. In our next meetings, if you are going to do it online, kindly join the class using your video email address. Okay. Let me address some few theoretical issues and then quickly we look at some examples real time having to develop them. Okay, so we're going to discuss this concept which is very important for this course called event-driven programming. My good friends, the happy section in this particular topic area is that it is the same for a course you'll be taking next semester, advanced programming, or those of you in the computer science will be taking a course systems programming. IT takes advanced system development. It is the same, but in that case you'll be using C#. C# is purely event-driven programming. Java is also event-driven programming. So the concept you will learn today is also directly applicable to C#, okay? Because you will be developing graphical user interfaces and then the concepts are the same. If you understand it very well in this class, then it becomes 100% advantage for you in the next class that you've taken, the system programming or advanced application development. Now, talking of an event is an action that takes place within a program. So, for example, clicking of a button, okay? Clicking of a button is an example of an event. In graphical user interfaces, majority of the activities that we do, they are more by these interactions, okay? So the task of you having to click on the button or you having to open or close a file or open or close a folder are all examples of events. We create these events by creating what we call the event listener. The event listener tends to be a construct that will look at the event and then it will know which event handler it is supposed to invoke. I should think you would understand this section much more reasonably if we begin to look at the practical side of this particular lesson. Okay, so let me make it much easier for you. So like we said earlier, an example of an event is clicking a button. Now, anytime you're clicking on the button, you expect that something should happen, isn't it? Based on what the button is defined for, it should behave as such. So in some cases, you're clicking on the button, you want the button to close the window. You want it to maybe maximize or restore the window, or you want to typically minimize the window. Or you may click on the button, you expect that the machine should shut down, or it should be turned on, or it should restart. Now, the activity or the task of having to click on these components is what we are calling what? The event. Is this number one clearly understood by all of you? Event. An example of the event is the clicking, maximizing, restoring a window, or opening or closing a file. These are all examples of an event, dragging and then dropping a file from one repository to another repository on the computer system. They are all examples of an event. Any questions on what events are? Any questions? I want to know. Deleting a file is an example of an event. Updating, editing, all of the interactions that we perform with the computer system are examples of an event. Any questions? All right. If you have no questions, then
is
I have
closing
the
a
chance
program
to
an
explain
event?
number two. How do these events take place? You click on the button, and then let's say the window opens up, or it closes, or it maximizes. The reason why those buttons are responsive is because you would have written some set of instructions behind those buttons. The instruction that you wrote most of the time will be kept in a function. The function that is making it possible that the window would open or close or maximize or will respond to the click is what we are calling what? The event handler. Two seconds, please. So understand that the event handler is a function. And you know what a function is because we did functions, and after functions we did classes. Okay. All right. So now the question comes. As it stands now, we have defined and given an example of what an event is. Okay. And then we have mentioned also that the event would only take place within of an event what? Event handler. And we have mentioned that in practice, the event handler is actually what? A function. Okay. So in the function, you will tell that maybe when you click on this button, it should do addition of 2 or more numbers. When you click on this button, it should open another window, or it should close the window, it should maximize a window, or it should move data from this particular window to another window. That is what the event is. Now, what is making it possible that when you click on the button, or when you pass on data, it is able to migrate it from one section of the machine to another, is because you have written some instructions in a function. The function that contains that defined behavior is what we are calling the event handler. I want to ask if you understand, number one, what an event is, and then if you understand what an event handler is. If you understand these two, then I have the chance to explain to you what an event listener is. All right. Having to understand what an event is, understanding what an event handler is, and what we're simply saying is that every event has a direct connection to an object. That object will help to know what event must take place. If you click on a button to restore, it is that object that is connected to that button which will tell which function must be what? Invoked to execute the event which is suggesting what? Restoring. If you click on the button to close a window, there will be an object that will be connected to that particular window, which will tell that the user of the machine will want to what? Close this particular window. That is what we're making reference to as what? The event listener. So the event listener is an object that automatically executes
It's 11 o'clock.
one of its methods when a specific event what occurs. So an example of those events will be what? Clicking, or moving, holding on, dragging a file or a folder from one repository to another repository. What will make it possible that the dragging can take place is what? is because the event listener is able to invoke an appropriate event handler to execute the event within it. Okay, so never be confused on what an event is, the event handler, and then the event listener. The event is the action that the human being is taking for this to be practical on the computer system. A function is written behind that particular button or control. That function is what we call the event handler. Okay, so the function would help that the activity or the event that the user want to achieve could actually be achieved on the computer system. Now, what will make it possible that when you have a set of functions called event handlers for different activities when they are defined on the machine, what will make it possible that the appropriate event handler is called is what we call the event listener. All right. If you didn't understand this, when we are doing the development, I will come back again to explain with an example what the event is, the event handler, and then what the event listeners are. I would get back to explain them in practice. So if you can remember, in class, we have started using the GUI option pane. In using the GUI option pane, we were already giving ourselves a teaser of the string class. Okay, so we needed to import the string class. If we need to use component from the AWT, then likewise, we have to import the AWT library. Now, most of the time, in applications need one or more windows with various components, like we saw in the earlier examples. So you would remember to understand that an example of a component is what? Is the label, right? We mentioned label. What else did we mention? We mentioned test field, right? We mentioned test field. What else did we mention? We also
Button.
mentioned combo box. Yes. We have a combo box.
Checkbox.
We have the list box. We have the slider and various other components. All of these components are put on what we call a window, right? So the window tends to seem as if it is more or less what? A container, which is simply a component that holds other what? It holds other components. So the label, the test field, the combo box, list boxes, the sliders, and then several other components are most of the time housed on what we call a window. A container that can be displayed, a container that can be displayed as a window is called what? A frame. So in Java, we are going to make use of what we call JFrame classes to help us to create what? Our windows. Don't forget, the window is just that graphical user interface where you would have the minimize, maximize, and restore button, and you have the close button. That is what we simply call in the label. The window. Okay, this is the window, and then on the window you can have a text box where you want to receive an input, or you can have a combo box also, a combo box where you may want to receive an input. Okay, or you can have a list box. Several controls that you want to use. What I would want you to quickly remember for now is that to help us to create these windows, we are going to make use of what? The JFrame class, because we want to build frames. The frame is simply what is going to form the graphical user interface. Now the frame has some basic properties. That it has the border, it has a title bar, and it has some set of buttons as minimizing, maximizing, and then closing the window, like I indicated in the earlier form. So this is an example of a window. You are going to learn how to create a window as this. All right, so this is what I said earlier on. You see, we needed to write some codes as these ones to define the dimensions of the window and the light, and we have to create an object for the gate frame. If you want to give the title, this is the approach we are going to use. But my good friend, there is an alternative that would allow us to do the same thing in a much more easy way. That is, you just drag and then drop. If the form would have to show, we'll have to invoke the window.setVisible to true. My friend, we can do this just by dragging and drop, right? So let me look for some concepts I may need to quickly explain to you, and then we'll move on from there. Okay, so by example, if we want to create a graphical design interface that will, for example, take a distance that is measured in kilometers, and then maybe it will convert it to millimeters or any other conversion. You can see over here what is written here is written on what kind of component. What component will have this? That is the label, right? So don't forget, anytime you want to write on a window, we use what? Label. Now at this side, we want to receive an input. That input is what? Unstructured. So we what? A text field. Okay, at the top where you see kilometer converter is the Windows what? Title. And then where we have this is a button. On the button has been given a label as what? Calculate. But remember that each control must be given what? Must be given a variable name. In Java, we call it a variable name. But in the common practice across all programming languages, it is just called a name. But in this case, typically using NetBeans, to give the control a programmable name, it is called variable name. But I should think you know what a variable is. Okay, so similarly, that is what we are going to learn to do. All right, so let's see if there is something else I must explain to you. Otherwise, quickly we'll begin to look at an example. All right, so I would explain all of this to you in the example, so then you can quickly adjust. Okay, so I would ask all of you at this point to launch NetBeans on your machine.
Today you are going NetBeans. Let God.
Yes. If you use the text editor, we need to write a lot of instructions. But using NetBeans for graphical user interface, it makes it much easier. I will need feedback from you when you are all ready, so then quickly we start this. I think somebody want to join the class. Did I cancel it? Please, when you are done launching NetBeans, alert me so then quickly we all start from that same page, okay? I don't want to leave anyone out on understanding this very important topic. If you are done, let me know in the chat panel. You will see that yes or no. Your machines are they Pentium ones? I need feedback from all of you, so then I'll know whether I should begin or not. Melchizedek, you can go ahead and then use IntelliJ, but you don't have to ask me questions on where did I pull this from, where did I pull this from, and how do you get it on IntelliJ, because I'm not using IntelliJ, my guy. Yeah. Or shall we have to talk on phone? I'm not available on campus today. I should think I saw your message. All right, so I think I have seen several positive responses. So let's get started. You are already aware on the graphical user interface in NetBeans. So this is not to teach you how to use NetBeans, but instead to teach you how to use NetBeans to create graphical user interfaces, right? So you go to a new project from the top left. Just as we are creating any project at all, you click on next. Let's give this a name. Let me do lazy programming. I'll just call it today. Click on finish. Okay, so now this is where actually the most important concept comes to play, right? What you want to create is a window. So at this point, you will need to right click on the project. I called mine today, right? Let me be sure I have not left anyone out. I hope you are all up to this point. You are done creating the project. I will need feedback from all of you. Give me feedback either you are done yes or no. Let me know if I'm moving too slow or too fast. Use the chat panel, please. Okay, thanks for the feedback. All right. So at this point in creating the graphical user interface, what you want to do is to create the window, right? How do you create the window? You go on top of where the project name is, right click, you have the option new, right? Earlier on, what we are going to have selected was Java class because we wanted to create classes. Okay. In this case, what we want to create is the window. And if you remember, when we're discussing the theoretical concept on GUI, we mentioned the JFrame, right? So in this case, what we pick is the JFrame form. Have you all seen that? From new, look for JFrame form. Be sure of what you are selecting. If you select JPanel for my friend, I didn't say select JPanel form. Don't select JPanel form and then ask me questions on it. I have asked you to pick JFrame form because that is what will help us to build extensions from the string class. All right, so we're selecting JFrame form. I hope it worked fine for all of you. So we want to literally call this, let's say, let's say my first GUI. Then we click on finish. We expect that this will create for us, the window. Has it worked fine for all of you? I will need feedback. If it did, let me know. If it didn't work, also let me know. I just need simple feedback, yes or no. Emmanuel, yours is still lantern. Wonderful. Okay. I have just received a message from the dean that we have he's meeting all the heads of department at 12 p.m. Okay, so I have about 45 minutes more to spend with your class. I'll move a little bit faster. However, you still have the chance to ask as many questions as possible. Okay, all right. So let's do this. This is the window that has been created. Um, to for starters, let me literally introduce you to this environment a little bit more before we look at the component. Right? When you look at the right side, when you look at the right side, um, please, for those of you who have turned on your microphones, kindly turn them off. I will give chance at each point for you to ask questions. Okay, so if you have turned on your microphone, kindly turn them off. After each section, you have a chance of asking questions, and I will do that. Right. So at this point, you can see, maybe if this is the first time you are opening yours, it may look somewhat like this. Yes. So you can see the string containers, the string controls, string menus, string windows, string filters, and then you can see the AWT and then the bins. Right? These are all under the palette where you can pick components from. Okay. In our case, over here, we mentioned some controls, or in the theoretical concept, we mentioned component. Components and controls are the same. I hope you remember. So if you hear me mention component or you hear me mention controls, we are talking of the same set of items. Okay. So in this case, we mentioned button. You can see button here. We have radio button. We have group button to help you group some set of buttons. We can see combo box here. We have checkbox, and we mentioned label. This is a list box, scroll bar, slider, progress bar. Um, all of these are components that we can put on the window. Okay. When you click on top, just on top of the string controls, you have the string containers. Okay, so for example, the panel. If you want to use this, you just have to click once on it, you drag it and drop. Okay, so you click once on the control, you click once on it, you drag it, and then you drop it on the form. Just try it out. Sorry, give me some few seconds. Okay, I just needed one panel in the interim. All right, we can see over here that the panel that we put here has some number of handlers around it. The handlers will help us to either reposition or resize the control. So in this case, if you want to resize it, you have the chance in doing so. Okay, so you have extended it this way. All right. Now let's just play around with some few things. I just want you to have, if we extend this, right, over here, you can put in let's say a test field. Okay, so we drag, and then drop a test field here. So you can see over here we have put a test field here, but most of the time you want the text field to have a corresponding label. Okay, so we will pick a label here. You just click once on it, you drag, and then you drop. Hey, why is the machine behaving this way? Did they work fine for all of you? Are you able to drag it and drop? Let me know if it works for you. Yes or no. Let's say yes or no. Are you able to drag it and drop? It is very important. Joshua, yours work. Okay, great. So let's do something very fundamental. You can expand this label, or you can clear out this to write what we intend to write in it. Okay. So maybe if you want to relabel it, right click on the label and then you select edit text. Do you have it? Right click, select edit text. I want to go slow so then you can all follow. This is just the first class on GUI. I want to go very slow. Okay, so you select edit text and then you want to write in this. Let's say first name. All right. Now in the text box, you want to take off what is written in there. To do that, you right click and then you select edit text. Okay, you don't want it to have any input, so you take that out. And when you do that, the size automatically shrinks. You can go back again to extend it. Okay, just take the mouse pointer to the sides. It will give you a chance to extend it. Let's do this again. We want to include another label and then another text field. Okay. Maybe we want to call this. Nope. Let's say last name. We would take off the text in this. So right click on top of it, we select edit text. The size shrinks. We want to increase it back to this size. Okay, so then they have a common size. My machine wants to give me attitude this morning. I have no reason why. Okay. You know what? Each control has some sort of attributes. So in this case, the panel that we have put the two labels and then the text fields into. Okay, it has an attribute. When you click on it, you can see from the side in properties. Can you see that? What we want to change about it is the border. If you can't see it, you can just click once on the panel. Be sure you have clicked on the panel. If you click on the label, it is the property of the label that will show. If you click on the text field, it is the property of the text field that will show. So please, what I'm asking you to do is to click instead on what? On the panel. Have you done that? Right click right click and then select properties. Can you see that? In my case, properties comes as the last option in the shortcut menu. Okay, so you right click, we select that, we click once on that. So now it will show us the property panel here. Okay, what we are looking for to make change to is the border. So you click on this side and we want to pick line border. If you want to give round corners, you can use you can click on this option, rounded corners. So then the square angle corners will be changed to rounded angle corners. And then you click on OK, and then close. Right. So you can see that now the panel has been given a border, which is a black line. Okay. Maybe we may want to put a button on it. All right, so button is here. So click once on it, we drag. Right, so what we want to do quickly now is we want to change the behavior of the button. We click once on the button here. So when you come to this section, when you click once on the button in the property panel, you will see that in the property text, you have J button 1, and that is the label here. Okay, with them, you right click, and then you select edit text. Okay, or you come to this side in the property box, and then you change this to, let's say, submit. You can see that it has changed the label here from J button 1 to submit. Did it work fine for all of you? Let me know at this point if somebody's having challenges. Say I didn't get the border settings. You didn't get the border settings? When you click on the panel, right click and then select properties. In properties, be sure that you have clicked on properties, because you see properties, events, and then code. Under properties, after background, the next thing you will see is border. Maybe have you seen it, please?
Yes, I have.
You have. Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's continue then. All right. So let's do this. Let me show you how to run this, so then you get to see the output of what we have done. Let me just minimize this to somewhat as this. All right. So now we run it. We run it from the green button, the green arrow button here at the top. If you can see my mouse pointer where it is hovering at this point. All right. Just click once on it. And then remember in this current IDE to be sure that the main class is selected. Before you click on it, save. Control S, save. And then select main class. Voila. So by this, we have built our first GUI. I want to know if at this point it worked fine for all of you. I'm moving very slow. I just want to be sure you are all able to follow.
Sorry, how to save it?
How to save? Control S. Esther, ask a question.
Sir,
If
it
there are
seems
any
that I
changes,
don't have. So it seems that I don't have like the properties option and border in the button. I can't see the border option.
all right. Esther, look on the screen very well.
Okay.
Be sure you have selected the panel only. Have you done that? Just click on it once. Have you done that?
So I'm talking about the button, the submit.
Submit. Yes. What
Yes.
about it, please? Yes.
Oh, I thought that you had like I didn't get what you did there.
We only change the label on the button. So when you select the button,
Okay.
in the property panel, you will see the property test. In the property test, instead of J button 1, we change it to submit.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Otherwise, you can still go ahead and then select edit test. If you select edit test from here, you have the chance to change whatever is there. All right. Any other question from any of
Thank
you?
you, sir.
I could create a new project. I don't know what's wrong with my machine, but I am having difficulties creating a new project. Emmanuel, you have to call your landlord. I don't know why this problem is happening. If you have tried every option, it is not working for you, kindly restart your machine or restart the application, close it, and then reopen it. Yes, Joshua, it means that you did not save. Save first. If you don't save, this is the feedback you will get. No main class found. Kindly save first. Control S. Save before you click on run. Okay, so now you can understand that from this side, if you run the script. Now, if you enter first name, let's see John. Last name is Arthur. If you click on submit, nothing happens, isn't it? Nothing happens. The only thing we have is change in color, which is an attribute that is by default given to the button upon clicking, right? Okay, so what we have done so far is to be able to create controls, put controls on a window. What we were saying earlier was the J-frame is this whole thing we have created here, right? This is the J-frame. It helps how to create the window. The window has the close, maximize, restore. Sorry, this is minimize and then maximize, restore button. Okay, they come by default with the window. Remember, this is what we call J-frame. Now, on the J-frame form, we are able to put several components or controls. An example of the control is, in this case, the panel. What are we using the panel for? The panel is simply helping us to group components, right? So in this case, we have components that are labels and then text fields. You have grouped them using what? A panel. Okay, what we have here is an example of a text box. What we have here now, I'm clicking on, is a button. But now the button is not responsive. What do we do to make this responsive? Maybe in this code or in this example, what we simply want to do is that when the user submits the first name and the last name, we just want to display a full name. So a basic computation behind this. Okay, so to do that, let's close this. Now look here at the top. All we have done, the application has written the code for us, because we should have written a code to create the J-frame form. We should have written a code to represent the panel, a code for the labels, and then for the text fields, and then the button here. But the application created it for us because of the approach that we use. If you want to see the code, you click on source, not beef sauce or chicken sauce. You remember I have asked you to go and then learn chapter 10 on your own. The keyword extends simply is bringing to light the idea of inheritance. Okay, and I think in C++ we're introduced to inheritance. It is not important that I repeat that same concept if you can be taught some more important concepts than just inheritance. It is very important in this class, but learn that on your own. I hope you will remember. So in this case,
The C++
the class
very
you
taught inheritance.
are not
Yeah, we
taught
didn't
inheritance.
plus.
No
Yeah.
problem. Go and teach yourself. Go and teach yourself. Learn chapter 10. You are big men and women now. Go and learn.
Yes, sir. We are big men.
Yeah. You are big men and women. Go and learn inheritance by yourself. If you have any questions in our next class, you can ask questions, right? So inheritance will simply mean just like we all have parents, we have borrowed some features from our parents, right? So you may either be looking like your father or looking like your mother, or you have resemblance of both of them. That is called inheritance. This inheritance can also come in the fact that your parents may have some physical assets where they have reeled you in those assets. So then either they being alive or in their absence, you can tend to own those assets. That is called inheritance in the human perspective. When they come to programming, it will simply mean that there is what you call a superclass. That superclass has some set of attributes. You are creating another class, and then you want that class to borrow attributes from that superclass. So you take, for example, there is the superclass called JFrame, right? The JFrame contains several components like labels, text fields, list boxes, sliders, combo boxes, several other components, right? Those components are not in the class that we have created by ourselves, but we want to be able to have these components in the JFrame in the class that we are creating. To do that, we would say that our class must inherit from the JFrame class. In doing that, we use the keyword what? Extends. The assignment is what I have explained to you. So go on and read in more extensively on that. Okay. So this is the class that we have created. The class JFrame has several components in it. We want to also make use of those same components without recreating them. Without us recreating them. To do that, we simply create our class, and then we will say that our class must inherit in keyword using the word extends. So my first GUI extends java.string.jframe, which means that it should borrow the attributes from the JFrame class to be used in the class, my first GUI. Okay. So we have some number of controls. We should have written these codes by ourselves to create them. You remember we have a button, we have two labels, we have two text fields, right? That is what the environment has done for us. That's created these variables for us freely. Okay, so now let's do this. Let's go back to this side. Okay. To make this functional, we are going to right click on the text box here. We want to give it an appropriate name. Okay, so we select change variable name. You right click and it selects change variable name. Have you done that, please? So we'll call this all right, so let's follow a naming pattern. Most of the time text boxes you will see TST to represent the text box. Okay, and let's call it, let's say, first name. TST first name. Now click on OK. And then now we'll come to the second text box. You right click, and then you select change variable name. We'll call that TST last name. Please leave no space in between them. It is just like you are giving a variable name. Leave no space in. TST last name. Okay. And then this button, let's call this because a button by nomenclature, you see BTN submit. And click on OK. All right. So by behavior, what we want to simply do is that when we click on this button, okay, upon clicking this button, we want that what is written in this text box will be picked. What is written in the next text box would also be picked, okay, and it will concatenate the two and then display them on a G option pane. Okay. So because we want that this action will take place upon the button click, it will mean that we will need to define the behavior of the button. We will need to write the code behind the button. How do we do that? You right click and then you go to what? Event. Do you remember we have mentioned events today? So you can either go to either action performed, or we can go to mouse and then we select mouse clicked. Any of them is correct. If you're not 100% sure what you want to do, whether it's supposed to be a mouse click, whatever, but all you know is it's supposed to be an event, then you select what? You go to event, action, and then select action performed. Okay, so we're selecting action performed. You can do this, or you can just come to the button and then you double click on the button. I hope you remember all of these options. Either you right click, you select event, you go to action, and then you go to action performed, or you instead come to mouse and then you select mouse click, because we want that it will print the full name upon clicking the button submit. Okay, so it is a mouse click event. However, if you are unsure, you just come to action and select action performed. Otherwise, you can just use raster manner. You double click on this. So if you double click, it takes you directly into the section where you would what? Write your code. Did it work fine for all of you? So you can see over here that we call the button what? BTN submit. So it has included what? Action performed. This is where we are going to define what would happen if we click on the button. Okay. All right. So now let's look back again at the design. If you click on the design, we have the text field. How did you call it? If you have forgotten the name, you can just right click again on it and then select change variable name. We call that TST first name. Okay. All right. So we go back into the code. What do you want to say is that on the control TSP first name, we want to get let's define a string. Okay, string, we call that f name. So we are using, let me make it very simple for you. We are using the function, a function called getTest. GetTest to help us to capture every input that will be put on the control. Okay, you put your first name here. You want your first name to be captured. For that to be captured, we are using the function what? GetTest. What is the name of the control? The name of the control is TST first name. Okay, so on the control TST first name, we want to pick every input that is on it. There is one critical point I must also quickly mention here. Just as when we started using the swing class, I mentioned to you, every input the J option pane would be in what format? It will be in what format? It will be in the form of a string. Do you remember that? Okay, so the getTest will pick every input, whether you enter a number, you enter whatever. It will represent the data in the form of a string. So we need to pass it on to a string variable before we can do whatever kind of computation you want to do. Okay, so in this case, we just want to print it out. Want to print this out on a message dialog box. It is saved in F name, so F name. All right, we have an error message here. Cannot find symbol. G option pane. Okay, yes, that is true. So let's just pick the first option to import the swing class for us. Okay. So we select add import. No suitable method found for show method box method. All right, so include null over here, and then pass on what you want to print at this section. Okay, now at this point, let's save it. Let's save it. So by this, what we have simply done is that whatever the user will enter on the first text box, it should capture it and then what? Display it on the message dialog box. Okay, let's run this and let's see the output. Okay, so we write the name John here. We click on the submit button. So it prints over here, John. Did it work fine for all of you? At this point, I was only teaching you how to capture data on a text field. Did it work fine for all of you? Give me feedback, let me know. Please, I can't find the border. Hi, Prosper.
No, it didn't. It's not working.
Maybe it's just it didn't work.
It's not working.
Esther, yours also didn't work.
So
Yes,
how do you get to display your GUI like, and then input the text into it?
The Lord is my shepherd. Okay, let me close this.
My own is working. My own is working.
Yours is working. I'm happy for you. All right, so let's do this.
We are all happy.
Okay. So let's take some 2 steps backwards. Esther, Mavis, are you done designing this form that we did earlier on? So you must have these 2 text boxes here. You must have the button. Have you done that?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You have. Okay. So because what we intend to do is that when we click on the button, that is when the event must be invoked. Okay. We want to write the instructions behind the button called submit. Okay. Now to write the instructions behind submit, double click on the button. Have you done that? If you double click on the button, in place text editing is available only for. Why are they giving me this one? If you double click, it should take you to it should create for you a function by default. Can you see a function called private void btn submit action perform blah 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 blah? Have you seen that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes. So in that function, my good friend, let me just copy and then paste this for you. Anyway, no, I must not do that. I don't know how you named your text boxes, okay? But in the code, the first text box I named mine TST first name. How did you name yours? Exactly the same way you name yours. Write that. Do you understand? Okay. If you're not sure the name you gave to the text box, click in the first text box, right click in it, and then select change variable name. Have you done that? If you select change variable name, it will show you the name that you have used for the text field. The name that is at this point must be the same name as what you will use in the code. If the spelling you make it different, it won't work. Okay. So be sure the same name you are giving to the text field is the same name as what you are using in the code. All right. All right. So I'm not making the change to the name I have used there. So I click on cancel. And then I go back to the source. So I click on source. So over here, you write the name of the first text field followed by .getText. The function getText is what will help us to capture the inputs the user will put on what? On the text field. Do you understand this? So we are using this function to capture that, and then we pass that on to a variable we have just created. We call that variable fName. So fName will contain the input the user placed on the text field. What you want to do further is to display that name on a message dialog box using the GUI option pane. So we have just written 2 lines of instructions behind the button. Okay, so I would copy that and then share it with you.
So for my own, the GUI option pane has been underlined. It says cannot find symbol.
Yes, it means that you have not imported the GUI option pane yet. Right? Go to the top of your code and then import. Just like we do in the regular code. Do the same thing here. Okay, so go to the very top of your script and then import. Even in the red button, where the red, it will give you a red button. Click on the red button where the is pointing to the arrow, and then select the first option, add import java s.string.GUI option pane. Have you seen that?
Yes, I've done it.
Do you have any more errors?
So when I run it, you see yours, when you run it, it will come for you to input the first name and the last name. Mine doesn't show like that.
How does it show?
It doesn't show anything. It only says load successful.
Esther, are you is your name Esther or Mavis? Who is talking?
Mavis, I'm Esther.
Esther, are you sure you selected JFrame form or you selected JPanel?
Sir, mine is working. It's Mavis that has a problem.
Ah, Mavis, be sure you selected J frame form and not J panel form. Okay.
Yeah, I selected the J frame form.
Hey, mom. If you are included any of your colleagues that for which DS worked, let them look at it for you. I'm unable to tell in full exactly why in your case it didn't work. All right, so what we want to further do is whilst we understand how to pick the test field, that a value on the text box, we want to complete the code. So we go back to the source. Where are we? All right. So at this point, we want to copy. Oops. Or copy this and then paste it twice. Paste it once. Sorry. We'll call this all name, and then this will be last name. Okay, so on this line, what we want to receive is the last name. On the first line, we are receiving the input on the text field first name. On the next, we are receiving the input on the last name. So be sure the name as you have used here is the same as what you used whilst you were designing the control. Okay, if you are not sure, like I said earlier, just right click on the name. Sorry, right click on the text field, select change variable name. So the name that shows is the name of the control. Copy and then use exactly that in your code. Okay, so we're going back to the source, the code. All right, so on this first line, we have captured the first input into the string variable called fname. On the next, you have captured the input into a variable called lname. What you want to do is actually to concatenate the two. Okay, so we create another string variable. We call that, let's say, full name, and then we'll say full name is fname plus lname. We will say your full name is, why do you have this one in bottom here? File all primes of binary operator. Oh, there's no need to flip. Not important. That's not what you want to do. Okay, so let's save this and then we'll run. We'll run it. Okay, so we enter the first name, John, last name, Atom. Then click on submit. It shows your full name is John. Oh, that is correct. It will show your full name is John because I used F name instead of what full name. I would have to change it. Thank you all for leading me to failure. We are quiet. It's supposed to be full name. The full name we want to show, not F name. Full name.
It's 12 o'clock.
My good friends, the time for the meeting is up, so we would have to end the class. But I just need to be 100% sure that this very fundamental introduction to graphical user interfaces, you all got it right, and I can leave you alone. So it prints out this on the screen. Did it work fine for all of you?
Yes, sir. So what if you want to separate, like bring a space between the first name and the full name, then the last name?
Yes, you can do that. Esther, can you not?
Yes, sir. I just found out how.
So I still can't find out how.
You can put a space here. Or you can based on the number of tabs that you want to have, you can even use an escape sequence /t. Okay, you put it here. That should provide a space for you any way around that you want to do that. And maybe you still have that challenge.
Yes.
Wow. You know what? Retry creating that same file and do it again. It must work. And then in this case, when you are going to be 100% sure that you selected JFrame form, not JPanel form.
Okay.
Okay, and then be 100% sure that those default codes that are generated for you, you don't mistakenly claim some of them and then rewrite them. It must work 100% fine for you. Please, any questions on what you have done in class today? Any questions, please? All right, in the absence of questions, then we would have a continuation of this concept in class, but in our next class, it will be a face-to-face meeting. Okay. Let's say a prayer and then we close. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for an opportunity to learn. We pray in Jesus' name that you shall continue to serve as guidance, even as we go about other activities of the day. And grant us greater hopes and greater confidence in you. And then where we have challenges in this course, bring us to a resolution in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Have we prayed thanksgiving? Amen. Thanks to all of you for coming in and joining in for today's class. Questions, contributions, all of them. Thank you. So we meet again, Goli, next week. All the best.
Yes, sir. That's as you are leaving, you can let Esther continue with us.
Yeah, funny.
Okay, Esther.
So last week's this thing, I have watched the video and everything. I still don't bab some of the concepts.
Keep watching the video then, Esther.
The recording we did in class last week, so I can follow
Yeah,
up.
it's because she
What?
hasn't subscribed to the channel.
All of you, go in and subscribe. Next time, if you
Yeah,
meet
subscribe.
you have not. If you meet face-to-face anybody who has not subscribed, minus 3.
Subscribe +10.
All right, no problem, Esther. Go in on Friday. I'll be on campus. You can come by the office. I'll look at it for you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right. Bye then.